Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. I don't know how to explain, but I'm drawn to those places that feel like the last stop before nothingness. Quiet, empty, and endless. That's why in the summer of 2022, I found myself booking a remote Airbnb near an abandoned town in Death Valley, California. The goal was to capture eerie, desolate photographs, the kind of shots that make people wonder what's lurking just outside the frame. The listing was perfect, an isolated cabin about a 30-minute drive from the nearest gas station, surrounded only by sand and rock. There was no Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just miles and miles of emptiness in every direction. The host even described it as a place to disconnect and embrace solitude. I was totally on board, but by the time I left, I swore I never wanted to be alone in the desert again. The drive was long and surreal, cutting through endless stretches of barren landscape. I passed an old rusted sign pointing toward a ghost town. It was nothing more than a few crumbling structures visible in the distance. The Airbnb cabin wasn't much farther ahead. It was small but functional. A single room, a little kitchenette, and a bathroom. The front door had a keypad lock, and a note inside mentioned there was a solar-powered security camera pointed at the entrance. That made me feel a little safer, knowing at least something was recording out there. That first night, I set up my camera on the porch, hoping to get long exposure shots of the night sky. The silence was unreal, just the faint whisper of wind over the sand. Around midnight, I packed everything up and went inside. I locked the door and checked it 3 times. Then I went to bed. Something woke me up a few hours later. At first, I thought it was the heat. I had left the window slightly open, and the desert air was dry and suffocating. But there was something odd, a heavy stillness in the room. Then I noticed the front door. It was open. Not wide open, but enough. Just a dark crack leading into the night. I sat up too fast, my head spinning. I knew I had locked it. I'd checked it at least 3 times. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the opening, waiting for something to move in the doorway. Nothing did. I grabbed the pocket knife I kept in my backpack, forcing myself to breathe. Then, as quietly as I could, I walked over to the door and pushed it shut, locking it again. My hands were shaking. I told myself it had been the wind, that maybe the latch hadn't fully clicked. Maybe that was the only logical explanation. But deep down, I knew I had locked that door. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then I remembered the security camera. I took out my phone and accessed the solar system's footage. It only recorded motion-activated clips, so I scrolled to the time I had gone to bed. At first, nothing. Hours of nothing. Then motion. I squinted at the screen. A dark silhouette just outside the door. The timestamp read 2:38 a.m. I skipped to the next clip. The door was open now. My breath caught in my throat. The next clip was from 4:17 a.m., almost 2 hours later. The man had come back onto the porch. He stepped away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the camera's frame. I checked the rest of the footage, looking for any sign of movement inside the cabin. But the camera only covered the porch. There were no interior angles, no way to see what he had done during those 2 missing hours. I jumped to my feet, suddenly needing to check everything. My bags, the cupboards, my camera gear, the fridge, the closets. Nothing was missing. Nothing had been moved. It was as if he had just been there, watching. I tried to convince myself that I would have woken up if he had done anything else, but I had no idea how close he had actually gotten to me. I grabbed my things and threw them into the car so fast I barely remember if I locked the door on my way out. All I could think about was getting out of there. When I reached the main road, I finally called the Airbnb host. She answered with a sleepy voice. I need to ask you something. Has anyone else reported anything weird at the cabin? I asked. A long silence. What do you mean? She finally said. I checked the security footage from last night. There was someone inside. Silence. Then she let out a sigh. "You should leave." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, already on my way. Another silence, and then, "I don't rent that place out very often," she admitted. "Not since the last guy." I swallowed hard. "Which last guy?" More silence. Then she muttered, "I thought I'd changed the locks." And she hung up. I didn't stop driving for hours. When I finally pulled into a gas station, I checked my phone again. The security camera feed was gone. The entire system wiped. I called the host again. No answer. A few days later, the listing was taken down. To this day, I don't know who that man was, but every now and then I think about those 2 missing hours of footage, the part where I was sleeping and he was watching. Story 2. I've been hiking solo for years, and I've always taken pride in knowing when to trust my instincts. I research, plan my routes, and keep my emergency contacts updated. Still, no matter how prepared you are, nothing really trains you for the moment when an ordinary situation suddenly twists into something you'll never forget. It was early autumn, and I was on a road trip through national parks documenting the journey for my blog. That day I had planned a moderate 6-mile hike in Bridger-Teton National Forest, just outside Jackson, Wyoming. The kind of trail challenging enough to feel rewarding but still well-marked and frequented by other people. I had all my gear: trail runners, a hydration pack, a power bank, the essentials. The weather was perfect, cool air and golden aspen leaves scattered over the dirt path. I'd been walking for about an hour when I saw him. He was leaning against a trail marker at a fork in the path, dressed in very worn hiking clothes, though nothing particularly professional. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, messy brown hair and an easy smile. "Headed up to the ridge?" he asked as I approached. I slowed my pace, assessing him like I always do with strangers in the mountains. His tone was casual, friendly, not intrusive. "That's the plan," I replied, keeping my voice polite but not overly inviting. He nodded. "I actually work as a guide out here. I'm taking a group tomorrow, but today I'm scouting alternate routes." I looked around. There was no one else nearby. "That's cool," I said, starting to walk again. He fell into step with me. "Have you been up here before?" "First time in this area." He smiled. "Then you've got to see the North Ridge. Almost nobody goes up there, but the view is insane. You can see the Tetons, and it's not even that far. Way better than the main trail." I paused for a second. My intuition told me to think twice. I'm not naive. I don't take random detours when I'm alone, and I definitely don't follow strange men deeper into the woods. But he said it so naturally, like he really was a park guide sharing a good tip. I checked my GPS. The main trail was clearly marked, though I'll admit the idea of another viewpoint was tempting. "Come on," he urged, sensing my hesitation. "It's not far, just half a mile that way." He pointed toward a narrow, overgrown opening in the trees, barely a path. I hesitated and made the mistake of following him. At first, everything seemed fine. Even though it was narrow, the path was there, a faint strip of dirt winding between the trees. He chattered as we went, pointing out rock formations and the occasional bit of wildlife. I stayed a few steps behind, ready to turn back if I had to. But the further we went, the more things started to feel wrong. There were no trail markers, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been through there recently. "How often do people come through here?" I asked, pretending to sound relaxed. "Not very often," he said over his shoulder. "That's the beauty of it." The trees closed in, and the sunlight filtered through in uneven slashes. The deeper we went, the quieter it became. No distant voices, no bird song, just the crunch of our footsteps. Then I noticed something else. The smell. Faint at first, but growing stronger with each step. A metallic, almost sour odor I couldn't place. I slowed down. My internal alarms were howling now. I reached for my phone to check the signal. At that moment, it buzzed. I looked at the screen and felt my stomach drop. A park alert. Do not trust unauthorized guides. There have been disappearances. I think I'm going to head back, I said, forcing myself to sound casual. He turned around slowly and I watched his face change. The friendly expression vanished, replaced by something different, calculated. Are you sure? He asked. We're almost there. Every nerve in my body screamed. I forced a smile. I just remembered I promised a friend I'd check in soon. I don't want to worry her. He didn't move aside. The silence stretched. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then he smiled, but it wasn't a normal, friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knows. That's smart, he said in an unnervingly even voice. You never know who you might run into out here. I took a step back. He mirrored me. In that moment, I knew he had no intention of letting me go. I turned around and walked quickly back toward the main trail. My legs burned, but I didn't run. Not yet. I needed to get out of his sight, put some distance between us before I really started sprinting. I glanced back once. He was still there, watching me. And then he started walking too, faster now, no longer pretending to be relaxed. My throat tightened. I didn't wait any longer. I ran. I ran like never before, dodging rocks, ducking under branches. I didn't care if I tripped. All that mattered was getting back to the main trail. Behind me, I heard footsteps close. I took a turn at full speed, nearly slipping on the loose dirt. Where was the damn trail? Finally, I saw it. A bright orange trail marker just ahead, and even better, 2 hikers in the distance. I sprinted toward them, waving my arms. Hey, hey. They turned, startled. I stumbled onto the trail, gasping for air. And then, nothing. The footsteps behind me had stopped. I turned around. He was gone. No sign of him. Not a sound. One of the hikers, a man in his 50s, asked, "Are you okay?" I tried to catch my breath. "Did you see?" There was a guy following me. They looked at each other, then back at me. We didn't see anyone. I reported it. I gave the rangers a full description, but they never found him. Worse still, when they searched that little side path, they found something else. An improvised campsite deep in the forest. No tent, just scattered belongings. An old backpack and a hunting knife embedded in a tree. To this day, I'd rather not imagine what might have happened if I hadn't listened to my instincts and checked my phone. But I did learn at least this. When someone offers you a shortcut in the wild, never take it. Story 3. Winter nights in Montana feel different. The snow-covered roads seem to go on forever, twisting through miles and miles of open land. There are no houses, no gas stations, no signs of life, except for the occasional lonely mailbox here and there marking a property hidden among the trees. It's the kind of setting that makes you feel completely alone, and that night, I was. I had spent the weekend at a friend's cabin near Red Lodge and was driving back to Billings, a solid 2-hour trip along dark back roads. It was past midnight and the roads were empty, just me, my car, and the sound of the tires on the frozen pavement. Every now and then a sign would catch my headlights and remind me I still had at least 40 minutes to go. I turned up the heat and rubbed my hands together. Then in the rearview mirror I saw red and blue lights flashing. A cop. I sighed and eased off the gas. I hadn't been speeding. In fact, I'd been especially careful because of the snow. Maybe I had a taillight out. In any case, I figured the best thing was to be polite, take the ticket, and move on. I turned on my blinker and pulled over onto the shoulder, making sure to stay on the firmest part of the snow. The car stopped behind me, its headlights blinding me in the mirrors. But something didn't add up. There was no siren, just the lights. And I noticed something else. The vehicle had no markings. It wasn't black and white. There were no department insignias, no unit number. Just a dark, unmarked sedan with emergency lights mounted on the roof. My whole body tensed. I stayed still, gripping the steering wheel, watching the silhouette inside. Whoever it was, they didn't seem in any hurry to get out. The seconds stretched into a full minute. Finally, the driver's door creaked open. A man stepped out. Tall, bundled up in a thick winter coat and wearing a beanie pulled low over his forehead. I squinted, trying to make out a badge, a nameplate, any official detail. But the closer he got, the stranger it seemed. The way he walked. Cops usually carry themselves in a certain way. Purposeful, direct. This guy moved differently, like he was improvising. A chill went through me, and it wasn't from the cold. I reached for the glove compartment to have my documents ready before he could ask, but then there was a knock on the window. I jumped. He hadn't gone to the driver's side. He was standing at the passenger window. Weird. I'd never seen a cop do that. I wasn't sure what to do, so I took a deep breath and rolled it down just a couple of inches. Freezing air rushed in, but I didn't care. I needed a barrier between us. He didn't lean down. He stayed standing, outlined by my headlights. License and registration. His voice was flat. I stiffened. What's this about?" "License and registration," he repeated. "I wasn't speeding." "Step out of the vehicle." My stomach clenched. That wasn't normal. No explanation, no questions, just get out. I answered carefully. "I'd rather stay inside the car." His posture shifted slightly. He adjusted his stance like he was getting ready for something. Then he smiled. Something about that smile made me instinctively tighten my grip on the steering wheel. "Sir," I said slowly, "can I see your badge?" Silence. I noticed he didn't have anything visible. No badge, no nameplate, no radio. His coat was zipped all the way up to his neck, hiding any identification. Then he said something that froze my blood. "Don't you trust me?" I dialed without breaking eye contact. I hit 911 and let it ring. He watched me. Without a word, he turned around and walked back to his car. The dispatcher picked up. 911, what's your emergency?" "Hi, I've been pulled over by an unmarked car, but where are you located?" I gave her my location, trying to keep my breathing steady. What she said next made my skin crawl. "We don't have any units in that area. Are you sure?" "There are no officers patrolling that stretch right now, sir." I looked up. The man was getting into his vehicle. He shut the door but didn't turn on the headlights. The roof lights went dark. Then he pulled back onto the road and drove away. Not in a hurry, not in a panic. He just left, disappearing into the night. I stayed there, phone pressed to my ear. "Sir," the dispatcher's voice cut through the silence. "He just left," I managed to say. "Did you get the license plate number?" No, my mind was a mess, stuck trying to process what had just happened. I think he was pretending to be a cop," I finally said. After another pause, the dispatcher replied, "Stay where you are. I'll send a real officer to meet you." A real sheriff showed up 15 minutes later. He took my statement, asked me to describe the car, the man, and every detail I could remember. When I finished, the officer exhaled and rubbed his jaw, like he'd heard stories like this before. "You're lucky," he murmured. I frowned. "Lucky?" He nodded. "Unfortunately, this isn't an isolated case. We've had reports. Unmarked car, fake officer. Always at night, always on these back roads." He stopped, looking down the dark stretch of road behind me. "The problem is most people don't call us. Even when they sense something's off, they second-guess themselves. They get out of the car." A slow, sick feeling tightened in my chest. "And then what happens?" I asked. The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past me, out at the empty road, as if picturing something he didn't want to say out loud. He gave my shoulder a pat. "Let's just say you did the right thing by calling 911. If you ever get pulled over again and something doesn't feel right, keep your doors locked and call us first." I swallowed hard. I didn't need the details. The warning was enough. I nodded, my pulse still racing. I drove the rest of the way home in tense silence, every shadow on the side of the road knotting my stomach. I never saw that car again, but I still think about what might have happened if I'd opened the door. And one thing I know for sure, Whoever that man was, he was not a cop. Story 4. Driving at night in Oregon can be peaceful until it isn't. I've been working as a rideshare driver for about a year, and I prefer the night shifts. Better tips, fewer unbearable customers. And honestly, there's something about cruising along quiet, empty roads in the early hours that I used to find strangely comforting. No honking, no rush hour stress. Just me, my music, and the pavement. That's what I thought before that night. It was a little after 2 a.m., and I was heading back to Eugene after dropping off a passenger at a remote Airbnb. Towering trees framed the almost deserted road. Their shadows stretched and shifted with my headlights. I had about an hour of driving left before getting home. I wasn't especially tired yet, but I was already daydreaming about collapsing into bed. It had been a long shift. That's when I saw her, a woman standing right in the middle of the road. I barely had time to react. I slammed the brakes. The tires screeched and skidded until I came to a stop just a few feet from her. My hands were locked onto the steering wheel, my chest tight from the sudden stop. She stood there, washed in my high beams, barefoot, wearing what looked like a thin white nightgown that fluttered in the breeze. Her hair was long and dark, her face expressionless, her lips slightly parted, but her eyes were fixed on me. And then she turned around and ran. She didn't say a word, didn't scream, didn't show any sign of panic. She just bolted into the forest. I stayed there for a few seconds, frozen, my heart pounding in my throat. What the hell had just happened? I glanced at my phone in the dashboard mount. No signal. My hands were still wrapped around the steering wheel out of sheer habit as I tried to process what I'd just seen. Was she in danger? I hesitated, caught between instinct and logic. This was rural Oregon. No gas stations, no towns nearby. Just nature for miles. If she was running from something, she wouldn't get far barefoot. I turned off the engine and switched on the hazard lights. My headlights still flooded the road with harsh white light, illuminating the spot where she had just been. Beyond that, the forest was pure black. I cracked the door open and stepped out cautiously. The night air was cold, filled with the distant hum of insects. Then I heard a rustle in the underbrush. Not deep in the forest, close. My breath caught as I turned my head toward the tree line, squinting to pierce the darkness. The shadows between the trunks seemed to shift, pulling together into a vaguely human shape. Someone was standing there. It wasn't the woman. It was someone else, completely still, watching. A stab of fear twisted in my gut. There were two of them. One had lured me out. The other was waiting. I took a step back toward the car. A branch snapped. The figure moved just slightly. I hurried, yanking the door open and diving inside, hitting the lock button in one motion. My hands fumbled with the key, my heart beating so hard it hurt. I had barely managed to start the car when I heard tapping on the passenger window. I snapped my head to the side. It was her. The woman was right outside the glass, just inches away. I hadn't even heard her approach. Her face was still completely blank. Her dark eyes were locked onto mine. My blood ran cold. I didn't think. I just stomped on the gas. The car lurched. The tires slipped for a fraction of a second, and then I shot forward down the road, leaving her behind in the rearview mirror. But right before she vanished in the distance, I saw it. She wasn't alone anymore. The second figure had stepped out of the woods and was watching me drive away. I didn't ease off the gas until I reached a gas station on the outskirts of the city. I parked under the brightest light I could find, locked the doors, and just sat there trying to breathe. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone. Still no service. Another 10 minutes passed before a single bar appeared, just enough to call 911. The dispatcher sounded bored. Could have been someone in distress, she said. Could have been a prank. I told her about the second figure. She paused, then asked if I'd seen their face. No, and somehow that made it worse. She said they'd sent a patrol car to take a look. I never heard anything more about it. The next day I combed through the local news. Nothing. No reports of a barefoot woman stopping cars. No arrests, no bodies found in the woods. It was like it had never happened. But I know what I saw, and I know what almost happened. Now every time I drive that stretch of road, I don't stop. Not for broken down cars, not for waving hands, and definitely not for women standing in the middle of the road. I never found out who they were. I don't know if it was a cult, a gang, or something even worse, but I know they were organized and knew exactly what each of them was supposed to do. If I had hesitated a few seconds longer, I wouldn't be here telling this story. If these stories left your nerves on edge, hit like, subscribe for more real horror, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Which story shook you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you've ever had a terrifying experience in an isolated place, share it. You never know who might benefit from the warning. Share this video with that person who thinks they'd know how to handle these situations better. Stay safe, stay alert, and trust your instincts, because out there no one is coming to help you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.